Please be seated.
Good afternoon and welcome in this beautiful Maastricht. My name is Tom van Veen. I'm acting pro-rector of this university and I chair this session. And hereby I open this academic ceremony in which Márcia da Mota Darós will defend the academic thesis Innovative Capabilities in Low-Tech Service Firms and Analysis of the Brazilian Boutique Hotels and Pest Control Sectors. May I invite you, Márcia, to present a summary of your study and the conclusion of your thesis in 15 minutes, 15 minutes. The floor is yours.
Dear Prorector, dear members of the Corona, dear family, friends, and online viewers. It's my privilege to present the main contributions of my doctoral research on innovation and innovative capabilities in low-tech service SMEs, an analysis of boutique hotels and the pest control sectors. The project began with a simple question I often heard from entrepreneurs in Brazil. Is innovation really something for us? Many small businesses owners believed innovation was expensive and mainly developed by high-tech companies. This doubt inspired me to investigate how small services innovate and what this means for their performance. In today's defense, I will highlight the relevance of this work, its research design, the key findings, and the policy implications, especially for small service firms in emerging economies. Let me start by highlighting the scientific and societal relevance of this research. First, it highlights the role of innovative capabilities in innovation SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, which are the backbone not only of national economies, but especially for local communities. Second, it highlights how SMEs contribute to local development and play a broader social role. They are the ones who create jobs, keep communities alive, and make growth more inclusive. Third, low-tech service SMEs are often neglected in both research and policy. This thesis helps close this gap by providing new data, a new service-oriented framework, and targeted policy recommendations for Brazil's national, local, and sectoral innovation systems. Finally, it introduces a multidimensional service-oriented framework for measuring capabilities and innovation that is better suited to the characteristics of small low-tech service firms. In this way, this thesis not only advances in academic debates, but also informs policies and practices that affect millions of small firms. Given this relevance, the next step was to ask what is missing in current research and policy. To answer that, I will highlight the main gaps, both methodological and conceptual. That motivated my study. Concerning the methodology, surveys like CIS and PinTech from Brazil have improved in the last years, but they still miss informal practices, small improvements, and service-oriented base innovation in small firms. Conceptually, three main gaps remain. First, we know little about how innovative capabilities actually drive innovation in low-tech service SMEs. Second, everyday innovations in these firms often go unnoticed and unmeasured. And third, policymaking in emerging countries still tends to overlook the role of innovative capabilities in these small service firms. These gaps led me to my central research question. How do innovative capabilities and absorptive capacity shape innovation and performance, especially in low-tech service SMEs in emerging economies? Since this question is quite broad, I split it into 4 questions, moving step by step from capabilities to absorptive capacity, to innovation, and then performance. To address these questions, I built a work based on 5 bodies of research, and together they constitute the theoretical framework of this thesis. First, innovative capabilities. Innovative capabilities, which are, I defend, the core drivers of innovation. I studied how skills, resources, and enabling routines, both internal and external, allows firms to innovate systematically. Second, absorptive capacity. This is the bridge between knowledge, innovative capabilities, and innovation. It refers to the firm's ability to acquire, assimilate, and apply knowledge. In other words, absorptive capacity is the method used to transform external inputs into actual innovation. The third, innovation in services. Here, I rely on evolutionary theory of the firm, and I emphasize that service innovation has some particular characteristics. It intends to be organizational, collaborative, and client-oriented, rather than purely technological. Fourth, innovation in small and medium-sized enterprises in emerging countries. These firms have unique characteristics and face specific constraints, such as limited resources and weaker institutional support. Their innovation trajectories are highly context-sensitive and shaped by their environment. And fifth, and last, the measurement of innovation. Over time, international surveys like CIS have broadened their scope, moving beyond manufacturing and R&D to better capture service innovations. Brazil's FinTech survey follows a similar path, gradually incorporating organizational and process-oriented dimensions. Yet, even the most recent surveys struggle to capture the informal, incremental innovations that are typical of small service firms. This underlines the importance of developing more context-sensitive indicators. Together, these 5 areas provide the conceptual basis of my research design. From this framework, I developed the conceptual model that drives my research. The slide shows overall conceptual model that brings together the main elements of my research. It combines the 5 theoretical areas I presented earlier into a single framework. On the left, we see the firm itself, represented by its main departments: planning, human resources, products and services, and marketing and sales. These routines form the basis of the firm's innovative capabilities, which are shown here in red. They are divided into intra-firm, routines, and cooperation, and are closely linked to absorptive capacity in the middle. Together, these mechanisms lie in the core of how small firms in the service sector reunite efforts to innovate. Moving to the third column, innovation. In blue, we have innovation outcomes across the same areas of the firm: planning, human resources, products and services, and marketing and sales. These outcomes then connected directly to the firm performance, highlighted here in green. Finally, all these dynamics are influenced by the external environment, shown here in black, including sectoral conditions, competitiveness, and demand. The arrows at the bottom represent the hypotheses I developed from this model. To make this model more straightforward, I simplify it here to highlight the 3 hypotheses that guided my research. Hypothesis 1, here. Hypothesis 1 contains that the stronger the firm's capabilities, the more likely is to innovate. And this was supported by my results in both boutique hotels and the pest control sector. Hypothesis 2 claimed that at departments level, capabilities in each area drive innovation outcomes in the same area. And the evidence shows that they are key precursors to innovation. Hypothesis 3 asserts that higher levels of innovation are associated with better performance in terms of revenue, efficiency, and growth. And this link was also supported by the data. So this simplified model shows a clear chain. Capabilities drive innovation, and innovation enhances performance. Having tested these 3 hypotheses, let me show the key findings and how they help us better understand innovative capability and innovation in low-tech service SMEs. The results point to 5 main insights. First, innovative capacity predicts innovation. In other words, firms build a stronger innovative capacity tend to generate more innovation. Second, innovation is associated with better performance. Even small, incremental improvements can lead to measurable outcomes such as higher revenues, faster growth, improved occupancy rates in the case of boutique hotels, and reduced idle capacity in the pest control sector. Third, innovation is a systematic process, not an isolated event. Especially in the case of small service firms, innovation takes place in all operational areas of the firm. Fourth, sector and context play an important role. The model has been tested in 2 very different sectors, and the actual pathways of innovation were shaped by specific market and sectoral conditions. Fifth, innovation is real and impactful beyond high-tech industries. The chain is clear. Innovative capabilities and also absorptive capacity leads to innovation. And innovation improves performance. These findings become more evident when we compare the 2 sectors. The overall logic is the same, but the pathways really differ significantly between boutique hotels and pest control sectors, as expected. In boutique hotels, innovation is customer-oriented and experience-based, serving mainly as a differentiation strategy through service design and marketing. This leads to higher occupancy rates, revenues, and growth, though not necessarily to high profits. In the pest control sector, innovation is process-oriented and efficiency-driven, shaped by regulation and standardization. Here, the gains were higher revenues, reduced idle capacity, and growth, again, without association, only with higher profits. In fact, the 2 sectors show very different dynamics. One, as I said, is much more customer-oriented, and the other one is more process-oriented. But in common, the common thread is that they are the same. Capabilities combined with absorptive capacity are associated with innovation, and innovation enhances performance. So while the 2 sectors followed different pathways, different trajectories, the overall logic supporting the model remained consistent. With that in mind, let me now highlight the broader contributions of this research. The thesis makes contributions in 4 main areas. First, theory and science. It shows that innovative capacity is a key driver of innovation. It also demonstrates that innovation in small and medium enterprises is not limited to high tech or research and development, but includes organizational, relational, and incremental forms. And by validating the model across these two different service sectors, the study provides strong cross-sector evidence. Second, methodology and data. I developed a multidimensional service-oriented model and a questionnaire tailored specifically for SMEs. This approach captures forms of innovation that are usually invisible, embedded in daily routines. The study also produced a rare primary data set with 259 firms across 146 cities in all 5 regions of Brazil. And importantly, this instrument is or can be replicable, meaning that it can be applied in other contexts. Third, policy recommendations. The key message is that the importance of capabilities. Innovation policy should place greater emphasis on building firm capabilities as a first step to innovation. Programs, policies must also be context-sensitive and sector-aware, because one-size-fits-all approaches simply do not work. Small firms are central to local development, and low-tech service sectors need to be recognized in policy, not overlooked by not overlooked as non-innovative. Fourth, sectoral governance. The results show that innovation is a firm-wide, systemic process. Departments must work together. Collaboration is essential, especially with suppliers, customers, associations, and technical institutions. And the pathways differ by sector. Boutique hotels rely much more on differentiation and service design, while pest control focuses on reliability and efficiency. My closing reflection is that innovation is both achievable and accessible in small firms. It is not limited to big labs or large budgets. Instead, it emerges through cumulative, systemic processes that have real economic and societal impact. Finally, this thesis positions innovation in services, small and medium-sized firms as a rare, Finally, this thesis positions innovation in service SMEs not as rare events, but as an everyday process that shape firm performance, support local development, and broaden our understanding of how innovation works in emerging economies. Thank you very much. I look forward for your questions.
Thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Verspagen, Professor of the Macroeconomics of Innovation and New Technologies at Maastricht University and UNU Merit, and Professor Verspagen was chair of the assessment committee of this thesis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pro-Rector. Dear candidate, dear Márcia, it's certainly very good to see you standing here defending your thesis. We and most of the other members of the committee have a bit of a longer history than usual, but that certainly makes it even sweeter to be here today. But you know that also our duty is to ask you some really difficult questions, so I'll try to do my best on that. And for my question, I'd like to focus on the topic of your questionnaires. There's been quite a bit of work that you've done on designing these questionnaires. You have devoted quite a bit of effort in the thesis to explaining why you think you needed these particular questionnaires rather than relying on the standard already available questionnaires and surveys that have been done by statistical agencies. You've also talked about that a little bit. And I'd like to ask you to reflect on that effort a little bit by thinking and telling us what you think about whether the specific tool that you have developed should now also be included in these innovation surveys that other people are doing. You've already told us on, I think, one of the slides, that not this one, but the one before, that you think that these surveys that you've developed are replicable, that they should be repeated. But I'd like to know specifically, do you think that parts of the questionnaire, maybe the entire questionnaire, should be included in innovation surveys such as the CIS here in Europe, with which I'm most familiar, but also the innovation surveys that are being done in Latin America, which is the other continent in the world where innovation surveys play a big role. So do you think that the work you've done has implications for those innovation surveys? What are these implications? What questions should be included there? And what could these innovation surveys learn from that? I'd finally like to stress that, for me, this is an open question. So if you think, no, what you've done is standing on itself, should not be included in those kind of surveys, that's also a valid answer. But given all that, I'd like you to reflect a little bit on that.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and for the questions. I think your questions are exactly the ones the policymakers make themselves every day. Policymakers and also the people who work in the research institutes. My work, it's only part of something that I think can be done, especially for this context of small firms. I used to say when I was looking at the questionnaires in the CIS, at FinTech, they are too hard to be translated to the real world of these small firms. I am much more familiar with the kinds of problems these firms face every day. When they look at this kind of questionnaire, for them is something very far from their realities. I am not sure if the questionnaire I developed is something that will be easy to be used because it's a very detailed questionnaire, because I really focused on the service specificities and the context in specificities. I know that if you try to enlarge to this survey to attend more sectors, I think it will be difficult. A huge work should be done. I know that. But what I want is, with my research, I wanted to shed some light on sectors that are overlooked by this institution, this survey framework. I say institution because it's widely used, it's very recognized. FinTech in Brazil also follows, but I think we needed to do much more, especially if we needed to capture the everyday innovation, as I emphasize in my work.
If the pro-rector would allow me to have a short follow-up question.
Please go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you very much for this answer. This is perfectly fine. I think there's little to disagree. But on the other hand, if we look at the diagram that you've shown us on one of the slides where you describe your conceptual framework, maybe one of your parliaments could find that. But
do you want to see the framework?
No, it's not necessarily. We don't have to put it there. But when I saw that framework, I sort of thought that, well, those factors that you described there can also be broader, can be seen as broader determinants of innovation in non-SMEs, in developed countries, in high-tech sectors. So one would then think that if you design a questionnaire that applies that particular framework, there would be also the general kind of implications that you would expect, because that's a framework that seems applicable for a broad range of firms. See what I mean?
Can you repeat
Well,
the last part?
If the framework is very broad, if the framework applies also to high-tech firms, large firms, and firms in developed countries, then the instrument that you design to implement that framework could also be applicable to those cases, large firms, high-tech firms, developed countries. But you seem to be arguing the opposite, and I'd like to know a little bit about that. Okay, maybe we save that for a later time.
I think, but I didn't understand. When you say my framework, if my framework is applicable to other the other sectors or other, I think so. Yeah, but in fact, Professor Bart, what I did mirrors in the questionnaire. The questionnaire mirrors the CIS. I based my questionnaire in the CIS. I don't see that difference. What I did was translate what is so hard for these small and medium-sized firms. I worked with them. So for them, especially, okay, I'm speaking about the case of Brazil. If you go to a boutique hotel and show them, okay, this is the survey, like a CIS framework, they will not understand. They think that this is not for them. The kinds of questions, the way they are constructed is not familiar for these small firms, which sometimes have 10 employees.
Can you finish your answer quickly? Because then we have to proceed.
I think it's finished. I think I'm happy with that. Okay?
Okay, thank you. The opposition will be continued by Professor Monen, Emeritus Professor at Maastricht University and JMU Merit.
Thank you, Mr. Projector. Dear candidate, dear Márcia, congratulations also for all the work that you did in constructing these data sets, constructing the questionnaire and then finding the firms, and there's a lot of work behind it. I would have a question, not so much about the data, but about the methodology that you have used. There is in the literature on innovation a model that is called the CDM, the Crépin-du-Guémérès model, which in a nutshell is very similar to what you have. That's to say, it has 3 components. One equation that explains the input, or that has as a dependent variable the input of innovation. One that has as a dependent variable the output of innovation, and one that has as a dependent variable a performance measure. Now, what is special in this model is that it takes into account at least 2 big econometric problems, the problem of selectivity and the problem of endogeneity. Selectivity means there are firms that do no innovation, and you do not discard these firms. They are in the data set, and you should not discard them. You should handle them as such. And the endogeneity has to do with the fact that firms that invest in input of innovation are also firms that have output of innovation at the same time. And there might be common factors that explains why they innovate and how much they innovate and why they are more successful. So there is a bicausality between those 3 variables. So let me ask you then, in your case, do you think that these problems are also problems that you face in your data set? In other words, are there firms, for instance, in the boutique hotel data set that are not innovative at all? And are there not problems of simultaneity? For instance, give you an example. I could also ask, but I'll do it myself. There is a question, for instance, in table 513, having to do with innovation-focused staff training, which is an input. And then in 515, among the outputs, there is a question on employee autonomy and empowerment, which is also training. So there's a question on training in the inputs and a question on training on the output, which shows that there is a simultaneity. So let me then ask you whether these econometric difficulties is something that is also relevant in your case.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and for the question. Can I ask you, please, the last part? Because while you were mentioning the question numbers, I was not with the book. Which are?
There is a question among the inputs having to do with training.
Yes.
And there is a question also in the outputs, which has to do with training, employee, autonomous, and empowerment training. So the same training is on the input side and on the output side. So if you have a coefficient that is significant, if that was the only variable, then it's obvious that there is a significant, because it's the same thing.
When I decided for these questions and I organized the data like that, it was in fact very difficult to get this data from the hotels and also from pest control. These questions, they are as innovative.
Can you continue, or?
Yeah, in fact, I don't understand your question.
I'll ask you the first question. Are there any firms that are not innovative in your data set? Or?
Yes. I measure it. So I don't know if I understood your question. So yes, and the data, I was able to capture it in both sectors. In this case, boutique hotels, taking this example, hotels that are more innovative, they implement innovation in all areas, all departments of the firm. Giving one example, if you take boutique hotels, which are, they have a structure, in terms of products and services, they create new services, like, for instance, a spa. To make this spa working, they need employees who are able to provide that services. That's where the training enters. So you have a new service, you design a new service, you need training, and to sell this service, you need to apply the other innovations in marketing to diffuse this innovation and be available in the market. So now the internet and the marketing instruments, the marketing tools work in a system. As I said, all areas working together. Training is one part of the whole strategy.
Thank you very much.
The opposition will be continued by Professor Gaillou, Professor of Economics at the University of Lille and member of the Assessment Committee. And Professor Gaillou is available online.
Well, I would like to thank
great. So I will tell you what is in for you. I'm going to read it as it is. I want to thank everyone who has been amazing for your support throughout my uni years.
Sorry,
I couldn't have done it without.
Something wrong with the technology, I'm afraid.
He's translating my English.
Okay, I think it's okay now. So you can start, Professor Gaillou.
No problem. So I was thanking Professor Denise de Krombrugge and Professor Ludovico Alcorta for inviting me to participate in this defense committee. I'm very glad to be with you, although online. I'm in Morocco. I first met Márcia a long time ago. It was in 2012 in Bucharest at the RESA conference. It's a service research conference, and we discussed about innovation in services at length, and I shared with her some bibliographical references, and I appreciated her motivation, her passion for research, and also her human qualities. And I also have learned that she faced some personal challenges during those years, but she showed exceptional resilience, which inspires admiration and respect. In her statement document, it was strange for me, this statement document, because in France we do not have such exercise, but she wrote, and I quote her, she said, "A PhD tests one's persistence and resilience as profoundly as it builds one's capacity to discover and absorb knowledge." And I consider that this proposition, this statement, is clearly validated and exemplified by her own experience. So congratulations. In my opinion, the thesis being defended is a very good piece of work, although there are some problems here and there, but no research work is perfect. It is good for several reasons. Let me tell you some of them. First of all, it addresses a very important and still unexplored topic. It is interested in measurement despite tremendous methodological problems and lack of data. It is also well structured and well written, but this is easy today because we have so many interesting tools that can help us make speaking and writing better English that we are able to. It also offers real added value in terms of methodology and in terms not an autistic work. It is grounded in socioeconomic reality, providing public policy recommendations and also funds management recommendations. So I congratulate Márcia for this neat job. And I will, as far as I understood, I just have 7 or 8 minutes for answer Q&A. So I will just ask a very short question regarding the theoretical references, and especially the theoretical references used in the field that I know a little bit, which is services and innovation in services. I consider that all the references that you use, Márcia, are very good, but I was surprised not to find one of them which seems to be important in our field, and this is the service dominant logic theory, as opposed to the goods dominant logic theory. I know that you know, of course, this theory developed in the United States by Vargo and Lush. This is a theory which is interesting for at least 2 reasons. The first reason is that it is an integrative approach to goods and services, which fits perfectly with your purpose, with what you want to do in your research. So it's an integrative one. So why exclude an integrative approach? And the second theoretical reason is that this theory is based on a resource-based view of the firm, which is focused on dynamic capabilities. And once again, it's your purpose. So are there reasons why you excluded this theory from your research? This is my question.
So, highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and for the question. Yes, in fact, I know this literature. But when I started this survey many years ago, I had something in mind, and I decided to test what I had in mind at the time and to re-elaborate the same idea to the second sector some years ago. I like this theory. I didn't use it on purpose, but for the future research is one of the topics I would like to emerge myself, because I really understand this your point. I agree, and it's something that I on purpose didn't use. Not at this time, because as I said, I had a framework in mind that I would like to test and use the same one for the second sector. That's the reason why.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Given
May I add one comment?
Given the time, I would like to
Or is it-
continue with the next opponent.
Okay.
Well, because we run out of time.
Okay, no
otherwise.
problem, no problem.
Maybe there is a second round and then we can continue. So the opposition will be continued by Professor Reichert, Associate Professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul. And Professor Reichert was member of the assessment committee and is with us online.
Okay, good day everyone, and thank you, Rector, the supervisors, Corona, for sharing this moment. And dear Márcia, first I'd like to congratulate you for the thorough work. We see a long piece that went throughout the years. And the topic of your dissertation is very important, especially in contexts like countries like Brazil, which depends heavily on low-tech firms. So in line with your dissertation, I also believe the relational aspects are essential for innovation in low-tech sectors. And although there are many aspects that are present in any context, each context has its specificities. In your results, these relational activities that you found, especially on the boutique hotel sectors, play a central role in innovation. And that's consistent with many works on low-tech innovation, especially manufacturing. And many innovations are triggered by suppliers or clients. However, in Brazil, historically, we've seen firms that they have been very reluctant to share information and to collaborate openly. So I'd like to know, how do you interpret the prominence of relational aspects in your findings? And especially if you think it reflects that the firms which are willing to collaborate are the ones achieving better innovation outcomes, or if you think it's more a necessity given the context of scarce resources, especially in countries such as Brazil. So if you could reflect on those topics, please. And thank you again.
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and for the questions. In fact, not only in boutique hotels, but this relational innovation, the collaboration, in fact, is one of the aspects that I gave a very important role, and exactly in what I call, in the model, external enabling routines. And together with the capacity of the firm to absorb the knowledge from outside. And this knowledge comes especially in the service sector from the customer, which are in contact directly with what we say front desk. In fact, there is a difference, and I could see it in the sectors, despite the fact that hotels rely much more on this relational innovation, these relational interfaces, they are not so well structured as the pest control sector. That's why they fail in innovate in for example, in marketing and sales, and in they fail in, for example, to innovate in one service and put this service in the market, because they fail in this relational innovation, this relational capacity, this interface. In the case of Brazil, different, for example, from South Africa, we don't have a governance institution that can provide this interface between for example, lawyers that can defend the problems the hotel has, or developed a better software, or contact external people from, firms from abroad to sell these services. So how you want to reach the external government, like export your services, if you don't have capacity to connect or interact with these people. So despite the fact that in boutique hotels, they need more interaction, especially because they need differentiation, and this customer relation is much more important. They are not so well developed if you compare with other countries, like Indonesia, South Africa, even Costa Rica, which is a small country. So we face many difficulties. On the other side, the pest control sector, they have a very strong governance. And we can see that they can fill this gap. They don't have that much this problem. They face other problems like informal business or even multinationals. Because these parts, they solved this problem if we compare to the hotels.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued by Professor Izuka, professor at the National Graduate Research Institute on Policy Studies in Tokyo.
Dear candidate Márcia, it's my pleasure to be here, and I must congratulate you for putting together enormous amount of work and addressing what I think that is very interesting, which is the low-tech firms and how they innovate. So I think that you did a very interesting work and also covering a lot of conceptual basis regarding the capabilities. So my question comes from that concept of capabilities. You addressed absorptive capability and how these connect to the performance, innovation and innovation to the performance. And I also see in the earlier intervention with the earlier opponent that there are some differences in governance. Maybe that might answer the my question that I'm about to ask. I was wondering, all these firms you have addressed and you have observed the incremental sort of improvement in innovation through both capacity, learning from externals, like clients, and then they are be able to apply it to their context to build their capabilities. My question is that what if they have faced a sudden crisis and have to transform their capability not in an incremental but drastic manner, how would they be able to do that? And what sort of, if they were to do it, policy could be effective in helping and guiding them? Because they may be looking at the short-term needs, in reacting to the short-term needs, but what I'm trying to say is that if they have to deal with crisis or some long-term agenda, what sort of capability that you think that would be necessary in low-tech firm context, and what sort of policy could be effective in that regard?
Highly esteemed opponents, thank you for your kind words and for the questions. I have one interesting example if we take the pest control sector into account. During the pandemic, they faced very huge problems in the beginning. However, the firms that have capacity were able to develop new services. For example, in the sanitation, everybody was facing the pandemic was a problem for many firms. In the beginning, I started this survey with them exactly in the pandemic in 2020. So I followed some examples. They were in the beginning very worried with the situation. However, the firms which have more capacity to think, to absorb this knowledge, so let's see what is happening in other countries. And also they collaborate with, like Hentokyu, which is a multinational. They collaborate with multinational companies to be able to spread this knowledge into the firms rapidly. So they don't have so much firms in the beginning were very worried, but they were happy because the end of pandemics, their revenue, the idle capacity was reduced. So the revenue had increased, growth increased, and the idle capacity reduced. So the firms that have much more capacity and the relational capacity of the firm to have this connection, that's what I mean when I say the strong governance. The association, the Pest Control Association, they have associations in about 20 states of Brazil. It's not much, but they were very important in disseminate the information among the firms. Like they work in collaboration, not as competitors. And your second question, I will answer if these institutions, like the governance, like association, or institutions like we have in Brazil, SEBRAE, which is a national institution who provide management training in diverse areas, finance, human resources, development of products and services. If we make these institutions strong, I think they will be much more reliable for small firms than the governments, because in both sectors, governments are not, they don't rely on government, because giving one example of boutique hotels, we have an association of hotels in Brazil, but they work as lobby for the multinational companies. So what I see, the policy can work or are supposed to work strongly is to make these institutions more strong and learn to collaborate with each other, not see the other as a competitor. Because small firms, they don't have this, the owner of the firm, they need to do everything at the same time. They do everything in the firm. So sometimes they need this knowledge and see the other as a collaborator.
Thank you very much.
The opposition will be continued by Dr. van der Laar, Head of Capacity Development at UU Merit, Maastricht University.
Thank you. Dear candidate, dear Márcia, I would like to join the other committee members in my congratulations for you to complete the dissertation. I've seen the process for the last 5-6 years, actually maybe even more, 10 years, I guess, almost. So I really have seen the effort and the energy that it took you to complete, so my congratulations on that. I'm also very happy to be part of this committee, even though I'm not an innovation expert. Hence my question coming from a methodological angle more than an innovative angle. Your case studies, as it's clearly been said today, the boutique hotels and the pest control sector are very distinct cases. They really do not compare to each other very well as sectors, and the mechanism within these cases that lead to innovation are not necessarily the same. Equally, in Brazil, you've done your case studies with a decade apart, which was very different in terms of economic situation, in terms of political situation. So I also would say that the case studies in terms of the context that they took place are not that comparable. Yet, when I read your theoretical and your practical justifications to do the cases, you talk about both sectors holding key structural and operational features, as well as contrasting orientations for comparative analysis. And that puzzled me, because I would think that rather than doing a comparative analysis, you actually have done two separate case studies and then try to explore and seek parallels in it. So my question to you would be, now knowing what you know now and knowing the differences between these two cases, what do you think could be a very interesting third low-tech service sector that might allow you to tease out some of those elements that attribute or that lead to innovation, or maybe find alternative explanations that you haven't included in your model? What do you think could be an interesting third case sector to make it more comparable?
Highly esteemed opponent, thank you for your kind words and for the questions. Your question is very interesting. I thought about it so many times. Because as you said, I made the surveys 1 decade apart. The hotels has another reality at the time. And I took the challenge Professor Dennis made. So what do you think about this to work with this other segment? And as I said, I had a contact with they have a very strong governance, and I knew them. So they were eager to be part of this survey. Very distinct realities. But when I think about continuing this survey, I didn't think about what kind of sector. I thought about to continue these studies and compare the data between themselves, to do another survey with the same sectors, to follow the evolution, and to try to insert or analyze much more data than I did in the past, because it's a pilot study. So the econometrics I used, I did what I could with the data I had. So I need to dig data to be able to do this survey. It's very difficult. I'm not taking data which is like secondary data. So it was very hard. But if I needed to repeat, I will, instead of try another sector, I will repeat the same questionnaire with the same sectors years apart. But it's a good question. I will be interesting to follow if I have another opportunity, or I'll be happy to continue this study. Or in other country, to compare the same sectors with other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 1 minute left. I just asked the beetle to come, so I suggest that we just wait for the beetle to come instead of starting a second round. And here he is.
I would have so much liked to ask another question.
I know. Márcia da Mota Darós, the time appointed for defending your thesis has passed. The degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room. Please be seated. Okay, now I have to read the correct text. Márcia da Mota Darós, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and your defense. In view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor de Krombrugge is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
All right, please.
Candidate, I first have to ask you a question. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
Yes, I promise.
Thank you very much. Then, by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, Márcia da Mota Darós, the degree of doctor, and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. As evidence of this, I now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee here present, and affixed with the official seal of the university.
Please be seated. So, Professor de Krombrugge will now give the laudatio.
So, dear Dr. Márcia, here we are at last, after years of toils, peregrinations, and a struggle for an academic life, with a big 400-page book. Your PhD journey, as we heard, started more than a decade ago with the desire to redress what you strongly perceived as a bias. But in your case, it was not a gender bias, a socio-economic bias, a fiscal bias, or a racial bias, which motivate many idealistic young scholars. Your concern was, as we have heard, with small, low-tech service firms who contribute the lion's share of the daily economic life and employment in a country like Brazil, but receive less scholarly attention than big companies with established brand names and global markets. To them, as you sort of implied, it may even sound strange to call innovation the small changes in the daily routines by which they try to raise their efficiency. The ways small service businesses evolve, improve their operations, and shape or reshape customer experience by their own subtle forms of innovation. At the time that you conceived your project, Márcia, they had received much less attention in the academic literature than anything to do with the more glamorous technological innovation proper, as embodied in brilliant products like plasma screens, personal computers, video games, smartphones, more recently self-driving electric cars and chatbots. Since you started your project, a lot of progress has been made on this front by you and by many other researchers, as you acknowledge, yet you argue in your thesis that it is still not nearly enough. You started your PhD journey with Luc Soete and Pim den Hertog, under whose supervision you designed and conducted, essentially single-handedly, a survey among Brazil's boutique hotels with a questionnaire you had developed from scratch. Then, at some point, the need arose for a more thorough statistical analysis of the data you had collected in this first survey. And you reached out to me, as far as I know, at the suggestion of Luc Soete and Bart Versparen. In the end, you have outlived Luc's patience and interest, which may be one reason why he is not here today. The other reason being that he is himself engaged in the EU's Joint Research Center meeting in Sevilla starting early tomorrow. In order to refine your methodology and assess the generalizability of the findings from the boutique hotel survey, you undertook a second survey in a quite different sector, urban pest control, with an improved questionnaire building on the experience of the first, which you propose in your thesis as a possible blueprint for such surveys in the future. To achieve the necessary reach, you managed to enlist the help of local business associations with names like APRAC and Cindyprac. Apart from that, you again designed and conducted the survey essentially by the strength of your own wrists. This is quite remarkable, and it cost you a major investment of life, time, and energy, plus a good deal of grit too, since by your own admission, as you were progressively shaping and reshaping your thesis, it also started reshaping you. While developing service innovation models, you simultaneously created your own model as a woman, inventing strategies and daily enabling routines, strengthening your capabilities, and innovating in how to reconcile and mediate the demands of research, family, and self. Along the way, you vastly improved your absorptive capacity. But you had to make difficult decisions that at times affected the balance of being a woman, a spouse, a mother, and an academic. These are almost your own words. Now, however, this arduous process has culminated. You completed this weighty 400-page book in print and with a beautiful cover, the crown of your decade-long effort. And at this point, let me express the hope and the wish that today is the day that 2025 turns for you from an annus horribilis into an annus mirabilis, with this event being like the spark that ignites a new fire, maybe a new career, the start of a different life that you fully deserve. I read somewhere that Mark Twain wrote at the end of a long letter, "If I had more time, I would write a shorter letter." I imagine you paraphrasing him as follows: "If I had more time, I would write a shorter thesis." Actually, this would have been a fitting 10th proposition. That elusive 10th proposition for which you were so desperately seeking inspiration just a few days ago. The explanation is that, in spite of all the time gone by since you embarked on the PhD adventure at UNU Merit, the final version of the thesis was written and rewritten under intense time pressure. Maybe in a sense, that time pressure was salutary. Otherwise, you might still be rewriting chapter 4 now. Or even preparing a third survey, who knows, including questions on the use of AI by service SMEs. Sorry for teasing you. But all good things have to come to an end, and I am truly, immensely happy that they are doing so today. And that your family was able to travel all the way from Brazil to attend and celebrate your graduation with us. Oh yes, your family. I know I can speak in your name to say to your mother, your sister, your brother, and your daughter, who all traveled long distances to attend this unique occasion, how grateful you are for their never-failing support over the many years past, particularly in the very distressing circumstances of the last few months. And also for actually being here today, despite the ill-timed cyber attacks on the airports and the sudden flight cancellations that followed. I must apologize, Senhora Lezice, for not being able to say more in Portuguese than just these few words. Obrigado, Senhora Lezice, Senhora Claudia, Senhor Virgilio Jr. e Senorita Lavinia, pela confiança, pela fé e pelo apoio incansável. Obrigado também por estarem aqui hoje. E obrigado a todos. Thank you all for being here today to surround and celebrate our fresh doctor, Márcia.
Given my limited knowledge of Portuguese, of 3 months of Duolingo, I think it was perfect, Denis, what you said. Before we close the session, I would like to give the floor to Professor Gayou, and thereafter Professor Reichert for the congratulations to the candidate. Professor Gayou? Oh, it's muted, so maybe...
It's so difficult to say more than Denis said. I don't speak Portuguese, although I have so many Brazilian friends. So what I can say is congratulations. It was a long trip, but it was a very good job. I'm very happy. I'm so sorry not to be with you and to have a drink with you, but I guess that we will find an opportunity to drink something together soon. Thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Professor Reichert?
Márcia, congratulations. I'm very happy that you are at this moment. It's a tough pathway, and then to end with these beautiful words. So, parabéns. Parabéns para a família, para todo o suporte de todo mundo. Congratulations.
Thank you. Dear Dr. Mota Darós, also on behalf of Maastricht University and the School of Business and Economics, I congratulate you with the degree that you have acquired. And this closes the session. We stay in this room for a moment for a photo. The 2 guests will stay online so that they are on the photo as well. Thereafter we go to the stairs for a photo, and there is a reception in the rafter, that's the hall. Somebody will show you how to go. And herewith I close the session.